Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl, today with me AJ and Thomas B. Today we're here in Imendingen at Mercedes-Benz's high-tech test facility. It's got high-speed ovals, off-road parkours, racetracks, the works, the perfect playground, and we have the perfect toys to play in it. Like, for example, this 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Coupe, the Gullwing. Let's take a closer look. Quick history lesson. So back in 1952, Mercedes-Benz had a very successful race car, the W194. Max Hoffman, who was Mercedes-Benz's USA distributor, convinced the board to make a road-going version of this car. And they agreed. So, in the 1954 New York Auto Show, they came out with this, the W198. And this, at that time, was really a supercar. Of course, there were other cars like the Lamborghini Miura, but it's debated that this perhaps was the first supercar of all time. Up front, we have a large three-point grille and the two wings flanking it. It's a beautiful design, so much of chrome on the bumpers, an incredibly low profile at the hood. You can imagine compared to modern-day cars. I mean, if you just look over there at the spiritual successor, the new SLS, you see so many of the similarities. But as we continue along the side, the chrome bumper comes here as well. And another iconic design element of the 300 SL Gullwing are these eyebrows over the wheel arches. Of course, it's there to look beautiful, but also serves a little bit of a purpose. For example, when there's rain on the road, this helps prevent the water splashing onto the windshield. Also, there is a rear view mirror up here in the front, on the hood itself, on the body, because as you can see, the A-pillar is really narrow, and we'll come to the doors in a minute, of course, but again, just such an old classic 50s design. I also love the louvers, these gills on the side, which again just add so much character, as well as serving a purpose to help ventilate the air from below the car to help aerodynamics. As we go along the side, more chrome along the bottom, a beautiful Mercedes-Benz badging down here. Now, as you might already know, well, this is the Gullwing. So you pull this up and the door goes upwards. Now, why is that? Does it just look cool? Well, sure, but actually, if you look down here, this is a huge sill, and that's because the 300 SL was built with a tubular frame, made of chrome molybdenum. In fact, the SL stands for super light in German. And because this frame goes underneath here and along the sides of the body, it was not possible to have conventional doors which open this way, because this section of the frame down here was crucial for the rigidity of the body. And therefore, this was a design necessity and not something that they did just to make it look cool. We'll take a little bit of a closer look inside once I get inside, and I can tell you so much more about it. But as we go further back, you can see that there is quite a large area here in the back to store your suitcases. In fact, this is probably the only place you could fit any luggage. It is not too large, but enough for a couple suitcases back then. As we come towards the rear of the car, just a beautiful shape, very smooth, very round edges, a large exhaust tip over here. We'll talk about the engine in a minute. Shiny chrome bumpers all around. In fact, there's also eyebrows on the rear wheel arches, although in this case it doesn't really serve a purpose, it's just also there for design symmetry. Lights down here. Also love these shark fin bumper extensions over here. Again, a classic, timeless design. A nice curved trunk hood on the lid with more badging, 300 SL written down here. Unfortunately, I can't open this right now because I need a key, but inside as well, there isn't much space because it is taken up by the spare wheel as well as the fuel tank. So, not the most practical car, but what makes it special is the way it looks and, of course, the way it drives. Under this gorgeous clamshell bonnet is just one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a very long time. This is the heart of the 300 SL. It's a 3-liter straight-six petrol engine with mechanical direct fuel injection that was derived from the Messerschmitt fighter plane from World War II. In fact, at that time, this was the first production car ever to use this technology. This made 243 PS at a pretty high 6,100 RPM, but then again, back in that time, this was quite common. This was mated to a 4-speed manual transmission going to rear-wheel drive. As you can see, this is a very low-profile car, like I mentioned, very low bonnet. So in order to fit this behemoth of an engine, they had to tilt the entire engine by 50 degrees. So it's not standing this way, it's actually tilted by 50 degrees, and it's kind of this way. And that also gives rise to this beautiful sand-cast aluminium intake manifold as well. To stop this car, there are 4 ventilated drum brakes all around. Not very confidence-inspiring because the top speed of this is 263 kilometers per hour, which at that time made this the world's fastest production car. Let's take a look inside. Wow, getting inside is a bit of an occasion in itself because, like I mentioned, this huge sill makes it a bit tricky. However, you have a little bit of a, something to help you out. You can flip the steering wheel down. It's not the most elegant ingress, if I'm honest, but who cares? Nobody's looking at you. Everybody's looking at the car. And this pops back in. Wow, a beautiful, thin, 2-spoke steering wheel, ivory color, smooth, very nice, pedal feel all across. In fact, there is quite a lot of room. So yes, the frame does take up a lot of space, but it's not too cramped. For 2 people who are not too large, it's actually fairly comfortable. If I were to put the door down, it is a little bit claustrophobic. You feel like the sky's falling on top of you, but I do have just about enough headroom. I'm 5'8". Well, I guess people in the 50s were shorter, so it's not too bad. The seats are very comfortable. You're sitting very low. In fact, this is a very sporty seating position because my feet are stretched out all the way forward. As you can see, my knees are also really down. There really is. It's not like you're sitting on the car, you're really sitting in the car. It feels like I'm sitting in a bathtub with all these sills around me. But oh my God, I mean, look at these gorgeous styles. There's so many, analog, beautiful dials. This is what I love. I mean, there's a fuel meter, there's a speedometer, there's a tachometer, a speedometer, a water gauge, an oil pressure gauge, an oil temperature gauge, and a bunch of, clocks and toggles and switches. A simple clock over here as well. A central rear view mirror on the inside, not affixed to the roof, but rather here on the dashboard. That's so cool. It also even has a day and night functionality. How cool is that? And it works. It's fantastic. And honestly, now that I'm sitting in the car, the rear view mirror outside is actually really useful. I mean, I can see the rear haunch of the car, and it gives me a good idea on the perimeter or the periphery of this car. A large transmission tunnel here in the middle, very soft seats, no headrest. Of course, back then, you didn't really, it was not that common, but the seats are very comfortable. It's also kind of leaning back, so you do have under-thigh support, a thin shift lever for the 4-speed manual, and I mean, it's all about the driving sensation. So I think it's about time I shut up and just go for a drive. Let's take out the 300 SL for a quick spin around this high-speed oval racetrack. 3-liter straight six, 243 PS, 4-speed manual. Wow. First impressions. Well, back when the W194 racetrack, was developed, they had a lot of things in mind. One important thing was to keep it very reliable and, in a very interesting way, keep it very comfortable. Because you see, a lot of races back then were endurance races, and the drivers needed to be alert and comfortable enough to keep on the racetrack for longer. And the mechanical fuel injection also enabled the car to have more reliable, sustainable performance. But yeah, because of that race heritage, the 300 SL, in my opinion, had a few drawbacks. First of all, the frame, which of course gave rise to the gull wing, which I think is fantastic, also meant that getting inside it was a little bit harder. The rear axle also pivoted, and if you were at high speed and hit a bump, the pivot would be so much that the camber would change so drastically, and the car would just kind of move around quite a lot. And of course, the large fuel tank and the spare wheel meant the trunk was really not usable at all. These issues were all fixed with the 300 SL Roadster, and I got to drive that on some country roads earlier today, and I just fell in love. And I think that car is I think it's a lot more better than this. Of course, the coupe is iconic, but I think the Roadster just made it a much more enjoyable, usable road car. It has a very low center of gravity. In fact, the seating position is really fantastic. It's spot on. You can change the railings to make the seat lower. You can put different cushions, so you can really manually adjust the seating position. But in this position, I have still plenty of headroom. It's not that claustrophobic inside as well. It's fairly wide. Even though the window sills or the door sills are still pretty big, you still have space to move your elbow a little bit on the inside. Visibility is not too bad either. So on the whole, it's a great sports car. And the gearbox, I think, is actually pleasantly surprised me. It's a very nice gearbox. It's very easy to find the gears. You don't really find any false neutrals. It's very easy to shift. The clutch is also fairly light. So on the whole, the 300 SL really lives up to its expectation. I think it truly is the first supercar. Out on normal country roads and not on the oval high-speed racetrack, a few things also come into play. First of all, even at fairly low speeds, I'm still going only about 40 kilometers per hour right now. The car is very, very loud. The engine is very loud. It's very hot inside. Of course, I have the ventilation on, but it's not very effective. On a hot summer day like this, the metal just cooks you inside. And that's also when you start feeling a little bit hemmed in because of this, this kind of low visibility, less windows. You can, of course, open this and it makes life a little bit better. But on the whole, it is quite loud and quite hot in here. But the handling is really good. The steering is also fairly nimble. Sound insulation, definitely. Like in this tunnel now, I can just hear everything humming. So it's not very quiet and comfortable. The seats are, for longer distances like this, not the most comfortable either. Going around corners like this, the steering wheel does get fairly heavy, so you really have to wrestle with it. But again, it's fun to do that. The gearbox really is fantastic. I really enjoy the gearbox, and because of the pedals and the position, it's very easy to do a quick heel toe. Let's listen to that straight six. Whoa. Fantastic. The gearing is also quite tall. So, I mean, it only has 4 gears, and you can hit top speed in 4th gear. So, gearing is quite tall. In fact, the first gear is there just to help you set off, and not much more than that. But you know, all of these impracticalities or all of these little quirks also is what makes the 300 SL a supercar. The performance, the extravagance, the doors. but it's everything else. It's the personality. It's all of these things put together that I think really makes the 300SL truly the first supercar in the world.